After a spat of disasters, there is some good news for Bangladesh's Rohingya refugees. The United Nations demanded $1 billion to help the refugees. The international community has already pitched in within $340 million. So more than a third of the funding has already been received. Our next report tells you where the global community stands on these donations and how they are helping the Rohingya in the time of crisis.
Misery never ends for the Rohingya in Bangladesh. Their camp in Bangladesh's Cox Bazar has become a COVID hotspot. 45 people tested positive on a single day last week. Poor hygiene conditions, combined with congested shanties, make these camps breeding grounds for the virus. An outbreak here would be disastrous, so authorities have imposed a lockdown at all Rohingya camps. They used loudspeakers to announce the new restrictions. But compliance is an issue. These are the scenes at Cox's Bazar after lockdown. People are still out and about, most of them without masks. The government has asked security agencies to enforce the lockdown here. They are setting up checkposts and patrolling the camps to keep people inside. But it isn't all bad news for the Rohingya. The international community appears to be stepping up. The United Nations refugee is seeking $1 billion to help the Rohingya. More than a third of the funds have already been raised.
In terms of the results of this morning's conference, remember, $943 million requested. There were $206 million in fresh contributions, but we should note that $134 million had already been contributed before this event, which means that up to now, $340 million, meaning 36% of this plan, have been funded.
While this is encouraging, there are fears that fatigue is creeping in within the international donors. The question of a lasting solution for the Rohingya has become complicated. Myanmar now has a military junta in power. How can the UN negotiate a settlement with a usurping regime?
In spite of all difficulties, we must remain focused on solutions in Myanmar. This is, of course, more difficult now, more complicated after the events of the 1st of February. It has added a layer of difficulty to the efforts that we're already making there. And by the way, let me take this opportunity, although this is outside the scope of the joint response plan, to echo the calls made by the UN Secretary General for the violence in Myanmar to stop, and for other neighboring countries to Myanmar, namely India and Thailand, to give refuge to the people that are seeking that refuge and fleeing.
More than 1 million Rohingya live in 30-odd camps in Bangladesh. Their living conditions are dismal. And for Bangladesh, the challenge of hosting these refugees is getting tougher every day. Reeling under the COVID-19 pandemic, Bangladesh's economy is straining to support the refugees. So international donors will have to step up even more. Taming the pandemic will be key to Bangladesh's revival. They started their vaccination drive back in February. 6 million people have got at least one shot, but the camp is yet to reach the Rohingya. In Bangladesh, they could be the last in line for a COVID vaccine. South Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.